Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kiev. We have several very interesting statements, and first we will discuss the statement that was made by the President of Ukraine, Zelensky. The end of this war must begin with unconditional ceasefire with the necessary quiet. Zelensky: this position is understood and supported by everyone. It is impossible to seriously talk about peace when our cities and communities are under constant fire. So as you can see, Zelensky is not going to accept anything proposed by the Russian Federation, and the Russians are not going to do the same. So now we see that there are two very important and different positions. Zelensky wants ceasefire, Russia wants the immediate stop and end of the war without any ceasefire. And this is most likely going to be a flag for us to understand who is going to win this war. If Russia accepts at some point some kind of unconditional ceasefire, this will mean that Russia will accept Ukrainian demands. But if Ukraine will sign peace agreement without any ceasefire, this is going to be a flag that Ukrainians accepted its defeat. Another important thing that the United States of America, after a ceasefire is announced in Ukraine, can send the PMCs. According to the outlet, according to the Telegraph, this would allow Trump to bypass his promise not to send American troops. PMCs are expected to help bolster Ukraine's defenses, protect American business, and assist in establishing new military bases. Their presence, the newspaper notes, is intended to deter Putin from violating a potential ceasefire. The plan also includes rearming and training the Ukrainian armed forces and to NATO standards. So we see that despite the talks, despite everything that was agreed by different presidents in different summits and negotiations, we see that the European countries, NATO itself wants to take Ukraine under their complete control. And most likely the Russian Federation see the situation, so that is why the Russians are not going to reduce clashes and attacks and strikes all over the entire territory of Ukraine. Furthermore, I would like to remind you that yesterday, the Chief of General Staff of the Russian Federation, Valery Gerasimov, said that the special military operation will continue, which means that most likely by the end of 2025, we will still seeing clashes and progress on the ground, attacks and strikes, and something tells me that the special military operation will be prolonged for another year, for 2026, until at least the summer of 2026. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Odessa region. During the previous night, the Russians carried out another massive missile and drone strike, mainly in the southern part of Ukraine, and lots of explosions were recorded to the south of Odessa, over the city of Odessa, in the vicinity of the settlement of Alexandrivka. So the Russians attacked one of the most powerful and most important port infrastructure object in the southern Odessa region. Lots of explosions were recorded, and the Russians gave some analytics regarding the situation. So the Russians are saying that Geran 2 strikes on the fishing port. A foreign vessel involved in the great logistics of the Ukrainian intelligence was damaged. Russian forces carry out a series of targeted strikes with Geran 2 attack drones on the territory of the Ilichevsk fishing port. At least 5 direct hits were recorded, causing large-scale fires and secondary detonation of cargo. The port's warehouse and handling areas were hit. As a result of the following was recorded: destruction of terminal facilities and storage warehouses, local explosions caused by detonation of stored cargo, intense fire in the packing area of sea vessels. So once again, lots of strikes were recorded. On August 35, 2020, at about 2 a.m., Russian forces struck the third critical facility in Ilichevsk, the railway ferry complex, which ensured the prompt unloading and disruption of military cargo via Chernomorsk. So we see that Ukrainians continue getting weapons and arms during the sea, during the Black Sea, during the sea trade. So the Russians were forced to attack this territory because it seems that Ukrainians are preparing themselves before something. Maybe the Ukrainians are planning to counterattack, maybe the Ukrainians are planning to get additional weapons just to reinforce some direction. Because if you remember, yesterday the chief of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation reported that the situation for Ukrainians is very critical in the area of the city of Pokrovsk, around the city of Konstantinovka, in the Kramatorsk direction, around the city of Siversk, and around the city of Kupiansk, which, according to the General Staff, was blocked by the Russians. Furthermore, during the previous nights, a few more explosions and attacks were recorded around the settlements of Pavlograd and Sinelnikovo. As for the city of Pavlograd, this city was attacked yesterday, and according to information we have, the Russians destroyed several warehouses and chemical plant and several military facilities. The sources are saying that there is still fire in this area and the Ukrainians can't do anything with this. The satellites recorded these pictures where we can see huge fire anomalies to the southeast of the city and to the northwest of the city. Another important thing is that both cities, Pavlograd and Sinelnikovo, are located along the main supply lines. We're talking about railways that go from the western part of Ukraine in the eastern direction. So these black lines are railways. The city of Pavlograd is located along the intersection of railways between the cities of Dnipro and the city of Pokrovsk, the cities of Zaporizhia and Kharkiv. The settlement of Sinelnikovo are located along the same lines, along the same supply roads, which means that the Russians, first of all, were trying to attack warehouses and ammo depots that Ukrainians and arms and cargoes that Ukrainians were planning to send in the Pokrovsk direction, where Ukrainians were planning to reinforce their positions, probably with the purpose to hold the lines along the entire Pokrovsk direction for as long as possible. Sinelnikovo, a series of Grand 2 strikes on a temporary deployment point of the Ukrainian Special Operation Forces with the detonation of an ammunition depot. On August 31st, about 1 a.m., Russian forces, carry out several targeted strikes with Grand 2 attack drones on temporary deployment point, and which are located in the vicinity on the territory of the Sinelnikovo agro-agricultural enterprise. In other important updates we got from pro-Russian resources, not from pro-Russian resources about Russian forces, but from probably Western analytics. According to information we have these days, by the end of the 31st of August, at the beginning of September, so these days, Russia is finalizing its strategic regrouping, having redeployed forces from Sumy and Kherson. Its offensive will likely enter a new phase soon. So the different analytics reported that the Russians redeployed forces from the Sumy direction and from the Kherson direction in the area of the city of Pokrovsk, and the Russians are about to enter the next phase of offensive operation, most likely with the purpose to break Ukrainian defense completely around the city of Pokrovsk and the Pokrovsk agglomeration, and to take this settlement and the settlement of Konstantinovka under complete control. So we believe that that is why the redeployment of Ukrainian forces and arms were, recorded from the city of Odessa in the direction of Pokrovsk through the settlements of Sinelnikovo and Pavlograd. But when we're talking about Russians, we see that they're doing this redeployment without any damage from Ukrainian side. But when talking about Ukrainian redeployment, we see that Ukrainians suffer huge losses while transferring units, forces, and arms from the western Ukraine in the eastern direction, which is obviously a huge advantage for the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Now let's talk about the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the about the Zaporizhia direction. During the previous nights, additional changes on the ground were recorded in the area of Kamyshevacha. I would like to remind you that just yesterday the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the village was taken by the Russians, and we have a video where we can see how Russians were establishing flags in different parts of the settlement. And today additional sources reported that the Russians secured not just the village of Kamyshevacha, but the Russians also managed to take under complete control trenches, fields, and the fortifications to the north and to the northeast. So we are talking about this territory. So huge progress on the ground. The Russians continue offensive operation further in the western direction. There are still a lot of villages on the Russia's way towards the R85 road, and obviously it will take time. It will take probably months before Russians are able to get this road. So we believe that the decisive battle for the R85 road between the cities of Pokrovsk and Guliai-Polye will start somewhere in May or April of 2026. So all these villages will be taken by the Russians during the next 6 months or so. As for the Novopavlovka direction, during the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. It seems that the Russians began another offensive operation, and this time the Russians are tasked to answer the city of Novopavlovka from the east. Several pro-Russian resources, as you can see, reported that the armed forces of the Russian Federation improved their positions in fields by taking under control additional tree lines, fortifications, anti-tank ditches, and strongholds, former strongholds of the armed forces of Ukraine. The Russians are getting closer and closer to Novopavlovka. The city is very important due to its sizes. If Russians take under control the city of Novopavlovka, this will allow the Russians to concentrate additional forces on the territory of the settlement. This will allow the Russians to improve their logistics and to begin offensive operation probably and possibly in the direction of the settlement by the name of Mizhova, which is located further to the west from the Pokrovsk agglomeration. So another very important offensive could be started by the Russians. As for the Pokrovsk agglomeration itself, during the previous 24 hours, very interesting details were recorded. So in this video, we can see how Russians destroyed Ukraine vehicle using the distance mining method. With drone, the Russians dropped several mines on the main supply lines that Ukrainians use between the northern and the southern part of the city, and the vehicle was destroyed when vehicle entered this territory. Several pro-Russian resources, very reliable resources, reported that the city of Pokrovsk, Russians improved their positions in the southern part of the city of Pokrovsk. So these territories were taken, especially the territory to the south, in the southern direction, and to the east of the Troyanda micro district. So this territory was taken by the Russians. They managed not just to take this territory, but to dig in deeper without any chances for Ukrainians to counterattack and restore positions in this area. Now let's move further. As for the Konstantinovka direction, the sources reported that during the previous 48 hours, the Ukrainians counterattacked in the area of the settlement of Pritechina. And as a result of this counteroffensive, Ukrainians managed to restore control over the southeastern part of the city and to answer the southwestern part of the settlement of Pritechina. So this is the situation. I'm not sure whether the Ukrainians are going to stay there for a very long period of time, but obviously this could be a very powerful and huge media victory for the armed forces of Ukraine. So I would like to remind you that just yesterday, the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that the Russians answered the city of Konstantinovka at least from 2 directions, and now we have reports that Ukrainians counterattacked and restored control over those territories. Now let's move into the Liman direction. During the previous 24 hours, additional changes on the ground were recorded. Several very reliable pro-Russian resources, as well as the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, reported that the Russians managed to answer the river of Nitrius to the south of the settlement of Shandrigalova. So this is the map that we discussed yesterday, published by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. Today, this information was confirmed by several pro-Russian resources. So this territory was taken by the Russians and Ukrainians on the area of Shandrigalova were Kotsin Cauldron, a very important village on the Russia's way towards the settlement of Drobyshevo and Liman. We see that the Russians are tightening the news around the city of Liman, and obviously the battle for this city is going to take place in 2025, but most likely in late autumn or early winter military campaign. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes on my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.